Hey, everybody, welcome. I am so excited to have my good friend, someone I look up to, not just with business, but with family and with faith and with using his gift to further the kingdom and to do amazing things for other people's lives. So Graham is here. I would say, if I was to put in a nutshell, I was trying to list out in my head, how do I explain who you are? You are, to me, first an entrepreneur. That's how I first found you, YouTube extraordinaire. When I started my YouTube channel, I was like, we're just following whatever he says to do. Best-selling author, dad to two amazing girls, husband to Shay, and a dear friend of ours. And so thank you for coming on and having this conversation, specifically talking about your new book that's coming out. Would you love to share? I'd love for you to share about it.
Oh, well, thank you for having me on, Katelyn. I want the record to show that you're one of the good people in this space. I love how you show up as a successful entrepreneur, as a wife, as a mother, as an encourager. You wear a lot of hats. You wear them well. I know it's not easy, and it's been a joy to get to know you over the years, originally through Shay.
Yes.
Back in the day, I remember coming to an event that she was speaking at. Maybe we both spoke at it at one point, but you were speaking, and I just kept hearing Katelyn James, Katelyn James. So I remember I knew of you before I met you, and then I was like, oh, she's way more humble and graceful than I thought she might be with all the praise that people sing of you. So you're a gem in the space and an encouragement to me that you can do well in life, make a big impact, and still be grounded and humble. So I'm honored to hang out with you.
Thank you. Thank you. I feel like those were very kind words. I feel like in this space, the more that I learn about this space, which I would consider, a lot of people in here, we're talking about photography because that's my background. But what I love about what you represent is knowing that you have this foundation. I feel like you live out of your foundation. Your foundation is an entrepreneur, and you know that about yourself. And your foundation is in your faith and the design you want for your family and for your life. And I feel like you're in a season where you're getting to really create content that speaks to that foundation at a really pretty big scale. Whereas before, you were teaching the content that your businesses were based in, and this was always there. It's always, you would mention it here and there, but now I just feel like you're going full steam and you're like, this is the life that I've built, and this is how it looks. And I wrote a book about it. Do you want to explain? Did I get that right? Am I on the right wavelength?
Yeah, I like how you describe it. I mean, I feel like if I were to describe this season, it's kind of a little deep because what I'm living is what I'm writing in the book. And I've heard it said that you write the book you most need to read. And I really need to read this one. So,
Great.
And it's been a wild ride, but I would say, starting in the education space in music specifically. So you teaching photography, me teaching music recording, a very similar type of business where it's this education company, highly technical. And then transitioning over the years into teaching the online business model that got me successful in the first place. Okay, people would ask, how are you doing what you're doing? How are you working so few hours, making so much money, talking about such a random topic? What's the model behind it? So I've been teaching that for 7 years. And every time I've pivoted in my business, it's felt scary, but it's also felt like this is more true to who I am. This is more true to who I am. Yes. As if I'm discovering myself. And so now in this moment, the new book is called Rebel, Find Yourself by Not Following the Crowd. This book, this is kind of wild because God gave me this book as a Holy Spirit download. I was not trying to write this book, at least in this season of my life. I thought it might be 10 years from now.
That's how he does things. That's how it happened.
I know. I should know it by now, but he's like, this is the book I want you to write. And I was like, well, the publisher's not going to go for that because my first book was in the business space. And so I felt him say, well, pitch it. So I pitched it to the publisher and they're like, let's sign it. When can you get the manuscript in? And I was like, I don't know. I don't know what this book is about. So I've been learning this book as I've been writing it. And really it's a book about discovering who you are. And this is what's so meta about it is I think all of us at some way, some level are frustrated right now with life. There's some area of your life that you're frustrated in. And it might be external circumstances, but I'm willing to bet that 50% of it is self-inflicted in the sense that you're living out of alignment with the way you're designed. And it might not be intentionally. A lot of times it's unintentionally, but I believe there's an alignment issue and the lack of understanding who you are is what's causing that. And so you're just conforming, you're falling into the pattern. There is a current, there's a little stream of conformity and it's flowing, It's life, it's culture, it's your family, it's the people around you. And if you're not doing anything, we know we're in that little stream and we're floating along somewhere we may not want to end up in all areas of life, not just business, but in your marriage, in your parenting, in the way you manage your time, your health. So this book is hey, let's stop for a second. Let's go the opposite direction. Let's avoid the crowd for a moment, because the crowd can't tell you who you are.
Right.
Right?
Right.
Only God can, and doing the inner work. You got to figure out who you are so that once you know who you are, you can show up fully, authentically. And just the way I describe a rebel real quick in the Katelyn, we can go wherever you want to go.
No, I love this.
A rebel, right? I don't know what comes to mind for you when you think of the word rebel. For me, being a rebel is someone who's saying, hey, the system is saying this way. I'm not going to just go bow to the system.
Yes.
I'm going to go the way I need to fully go, the way God wired me, show up fully with my gifts, my personality, my talents. It's all about authenticity. Like, to be a rebel to me is to be courageous enough to show up fully as myself, which is scary when everyone else says, don't be like that. Don't be different.
Yes.
Be like us.
Yes.
The world wants you to be vanilla. So it is a hard, scary thing to do, but that's what this book's trying to help people do.
There's so many things. Here I am, mom of four I'm taking notes with my Crayola marker here. I love this because when you said, I don't know what your definition of rebel is, but in my mind, my first thought was that it's negative. Being a rebel is negative. Like, you don't want to be that. But when you really look at our life, we're rebelling against a lot of things. And that's, and I know you would agree with this. It's in the definition that you just said, not in the definition of like, I just want to do things my way. It's actually not that at all. It is saying the flow, going with the flow. Like, what would happen if I got on the shore and just stood back enough to look at the stream and being like, this isn't even the creek I want to be in. Like, this isn't even the river I signed up for. How did I get so far downstream, headed a direction that I don't even want to be? And so many people, I'm noticing this in my own life. Our life is so full. It is taking major work and intention to be able to just slow down enough to even wrap my mind around the fact, what if I don't know fully what I want in my life? What if I've just been doing the same thing and running at certain races? I don't even realize that I'm missing some key pivots that I need to make. And I feel like that's why this book is going to be such a gift to people, because you're opening people's eyes to the fact that, like, you're not being a rebel just for the sake of being different. You're being a rebel because you purposefully, that there's more to your life than what you're currently living. What would you say? And I, talking to you, I know you're speaking from every aspect of your life, financially, marriage, parenting, business, your work-life balance, all of that. What would you say is the area that you have gotten the most pushback being a rebel? Like, people didn't get you. They didn't understand the decisions you were making.
Yeah, I mean, that's a great question. Career, for sure. So in the book, I posit there's 6 core areas of life that you can apply this rebel framework that I teach to, and one of those is your work. My dream was to be a rock star. So people didn't even understand me as a high school student. Like, I remember, Katelyn, I was called into my guidance counselor's office. Did you ever go to the guidance counselor in high school? Like,
yes.
I had like never been in her office. I guess that's a good sign because I didn't have any problems. And so I got called into her office, and I'm like, I think I'm a junior at this point, maybe a senior. And it's a really nice office, and I sit on the couch, and she seems really sweet. And she's like, well, Graham, I'm so glad you came, and I called you in here today because I wanted to ask, how is the college application process going? Now, context, I went to a private school as a college prep school. My mom was a teacher.
Yes.
And so she's like, you're going to go to this school.
Yes.
And I remember saying, I'm not going to go to college because I'm just going to be a rock star.
Yes.
And like, it was that was like my honest, genuine heart's desire. And I was so excited to be talking about it with her. Like, I could talk your ear off about all my dreams about being a musician.
Katelyn, so sweet.
Right. It was sweet, I thought, until I saw her face completely change. Like, the smile went away, and it was like, oh no, she's upset. And I will never forget what she said. She said, Graham, I don't know if you understand this, but we are a college prep school. And we have a 100% college acceptance rate at this school. I don't care what you do with your life, but you will apply to at least one college and you will get in. Have I
Wow.
made myself clear? I was like,
Wow.
dang. And that was like a moment that's burned in my brain. And it's like a picture of like when you have a dream that's just different than what everyone else is doing,
Wow.
even if you feel like it's from the Lord or just like your whole life, you've like, it's a desire you have, it is hard to believe in your dream when everyone else around you either goes like that, like coming down against it, like you won't do that, or gives you, I get this a lot, just like the blank stare, like, huh, that's interesting, you
Yeah.
know?
Yes.
You
Oh,
know what I'm talking about. You guys are rebels. Come on.
oh, we are rebels. Let me tell you my most recent example, and it's extreme. Telling people after research and after having 4 babies and having all types of experiences that you want to have a baby at home. You want to tell?
Yes.
I mean, we learned real quick. You don't talk about wanting to have a home birth unless you are asked. So, I mean, people literally said to me, "Please don't do that." And I'm like, I know, just you know what? It's not even worth sometimes arguing and trying to convince that guidance counselor that no, like you're different. You have a dream. Like you're going to college is not your dream. It's not even worth the conversation, right?
Yeah.
Because they're just not in a space to even consider anything beyond what the normal or the traditional method or path would be. When we started this school that we have, there's no teachers at this school. It's all coaches. It's a coaching model so that teenagers, middle school age, elementary age learners, even kindergarten, first, second, they're learning how to self-direct their life and their learning. And it's building this extreme level of self-responsibility and teamwork and collaboration. But if you go to most of the world, and we hit this wall when we started marketing this school, and you start sharing like, hey, there's actually no teachers here. And this is actually viewed as a homeschool co-op. And it's not what you think. It's not a little academy in the traditional sense. Blank stares. It's the
Yeah.
guidance counselor response of like, what are you trying to do? And I recognize, and I'm sure you're going to get this reaction. There are going to be some people that read this book. I think majority of the people that even pick up a book like this, and it's going to strengthen their courage. And I'm even just this conversation alone, hearing just another person speak the truth of like what we know to be true in our own life. It brings so much courage to our story and to our beliefs. I think there's going to be more people in guidance counselors' offices being like, yeah, I'm not even going to college. So I would say a question I had is when you were thinking about writing this book and you said that, you know, you pitched it to the publisher and I feel like you should have said like, no, y'all were supposed to say no to this. I was trying to be
Yeah.
obedient, but you were supposed to say no. What did it look like to sit down and be like, okay, wow, I'm writing this. Do you start at the end? Do you start outlining the chapters? Like how overwhelming? What did that process look like?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, this is only my second book, so I'm starting to develop a process for writing. But this book, the premise was really clear. Like when I got the idea for the book, like I knew it was part of my story, and I knew that other people. I had language. I finally had language for my story a little bit, and I wanted to empower people to live the way they were designed to live. And so I had the concept in my mind and the title, Rebel. And then God gave me this framework, this 5-part framework within 48 hours. Like
Wow.
I was like, well, what if I were to reverse engineer my story, and if I were to coach people through this process, how could I put it into a framework that they can like work themselves through? And he gave me this framework, and it made so much sense. So that kind of came as a download. So now I have a name, a concept, and a 5-part framework.
Yes.
And then from there, you have the meat of like, if I were going to sit down and coach you, and I view this book as like a coaching session. If I was going to coach you, I have what I would coach you on, but you have to really then put it into a narrative that people read. And as John Maxwell says, you want to write in such a way that people want to turn the page. Like every page, they got to be, I want to turn the page. I want to turn and that's a craft and an art that I'm still learning and developing.
Yes.
Like books are too long these days, no offense. And I read long books, but they're way too long. They go on way too many tangents that might have some interesting stuff, but they lose most of the readers. There is an art form, I think, and I think we need to get back to shrinking books down. This is random, but did you know that the 300-page, like typical personal development book, that size of a book, that came into being almost 100 years ago when people were trying to sell books more on the shelf and the spines were too thin. Books were a lot shorter back then. They were like 50 to 100 pages, but the spine was so thin, they realized if they make a 300-page book, I can see the title a little bit better on the bookshelf. It might get some attention. It might sell better. So we've been writing the same size book just because it's sold easier on a physical bookshelf. We don't have that problem anymore because no one goes to bookstores.
Right.
So I'm like, let's go away from 300 pages. This is like 180 page, like, just get to the point, make people want to actually finish the book and feel like I can do this. I mean, you're a great educator. And I think one of the things that makes for great education is not just teaching them what to do or why to do it, but making them believe they can do it. If they believe they can do it, they're going to go do it. And that's what you're doing in your school. So for me, writing this book was, how can I take this concept and explain it to them at the beginning where they're like, oh yes, this is the problem. This is the gap between where I am and where I want to go, is realizing I'm not living in alignment. How do I figure out who I am? Who am I? Dan Miller says the two most important questions in life to answer are, who am I and why am I here? That's what I'm trying to do in this book.
Yeah.
And then get into the meat of it. So my mind map books now, I learned that from Chandler Bolt, just sort of like, it's a way to brain dump without having to organize it, because my brain wants to put it in a linear fashion too soon. So just this story, this concept, this metaphor, this quote, just mind mapping it, then organizing it in a table of contents that would flow, again, to keep people to turn the page. But, it's a mess. And like with this book, it was like, I know this concept is powerful. I know this story is meaningful. How do I put these pieces together in a cohesive book? Whereas my first book, I've been teaching this stuff for 6-7 years. I have courses on it. I coach people. The frameworks were already there. So it was so fast and easy to write. This one felt like I had to discover the best way to teach it. But I'm really pleased with how it came out.
Yeah, I cannot wait to read it. And I feel like it feels like a different type of book, baby, than your first. It feels very different. And and I don't know if you feel this way, but it feels like, unlike your last book felt as if it was like a capstone project to a season of your life. It was like that was a cool 7 years, and I'm going to wrap it up with this awesome book that people can enjoy and grow from. And this feels like, and maybe I'm wrong and I'm like really projecting things on to your current life season, but it just feels almost like it's written at the beginning of, you've been living this way, but just exuding and helping people find alignment is like, this is the beginning of you sharing this part of your journey with the world at this level. You've always done it, but at this level. Is that true?
That's 100% how I look at it. Like, I appreciate you sharing that, because hearing you say that makes me feel like I'm not crazy. But that's exactly how I look at it. And so this is what's been scary about it. And this is, this will be a little meta. This is something I talk about in the book called the identity crisis intersection. Okay, so I think everyone has had one of these, will have one of these, will have multiple of these. I'm going through one right now. The identity crisis intersection is very simple. You have a dream. That dream could be a career dream. I want to start this business. I want to start this school. It could be a financial dream. I want to reach this level of financial success, or I want to buy a house, or I want to put my kids through college, or I want to pay off my debt. It could be a relationship dream. I want to get married. I want to have a child. Whatever it is, we all have dreams.
Yes.
Then that dream dies. That means maybe the business failed. Maybe the economy changed. Maybe we had unforeseen circumstances financially and we had to declare bankruptcy. Maybe the wife walked out or the husband walked out and now we're in divorce. And it's like, oh my gosh. For me, it was my rock star dream. The one I told my guidance counselor about. Like, I tried to get a record deal by age 22, by my senior year of college. I actually ended up going to college. Spoiler alert. It was kind of my parents agreed with the guidance counselor, and I kind of got forced into going. So I was like, well, fine. I'm going to use this time as an incubator to like write a lot of songs and get an album produced, and I'm going to land a record deal by the time I graduate. And so the short story of it is that the labels weren't coming back with any deals that had money attached to them. I was offered a couple development deals, which means nothing. We'll sign you, but we won't pay you anything. We'll see what you do. Yeah. And I was engaged to Shay at the time, so we were about to get married, and I was like, I actually need this to be my job. Yeah. Like, I need advance money. And so I had to make a decision. And so this is what happened. My dream was dying. So this is what happens to all of us. So the dream dies for whatever reason, meaning either you had it and it's gone, or like me, you never quite got it. Like, I tried to get that record deal and be a rock star and it didn't quite happen. What do you do? At this point, you're at this tender spot that I call the identity crisis intersection. And I call it that because our dreams are attached to our identities, whether we want to admit it or not. Like, that's why it's so painful when a dream dies, because part of us dies with it. That's why it's so exciting when you realize a dream you've always wanted to have, because it represents who you are. My thesis is that dreams are giant clues to the way God wired us. The more you know about what you dream about, it's not so that you like pursue all your dreams. It's really to get data, to get intel. Like, who am I? What do I care about? It tells you a lot about the way you're wired. So anyway, when your dream dies, part of you dies with it. And you're so hurt. You might be embarrassed. I was embarrassed because I told the world I was going to be a famous musician. And when people ask, did you get that record deal? How's that going?
Yeah.
You know, if you have a divorce, like, it's painful.
Yes.
Right? Like, people ask about it, it's painful. So when you're at this spot, you have two choices. That's why I call it an intersection. You can go left or right. The left choice, the first choice, is the path of conformity.
Yeah.
You get right back. It's like you put your head back down. That was stupid. I thought I was different. I thought I was special. I thought this could be true for me. I guess this doesn't happen for people. Maybe it's not true, not possible. If it's a relationship dream, I'm not going to date again. I'm not going to get married again. Heck no, that was too painful. If it's a business failure, I'm not going to pursue another business again. That was embarrassing. That was painful. For me, it was the music thing. I was like, forget that. It wasn't even the music thing. It was dreaming entirely. I said, dreaming is foolish. I'm never going to dream again. I'm just going to lower my expectations in life. And I'm just going to try to be a good person, air quotes.
Yeah.
And pay my taxes, go to church, be a husband, whatever. And that's what I did for 4 or 5 years until the global recession kicked my teeth in and I lost a few jobs and God told me to start a business. And the rest is kind of my story. Wow. But that's one path, and that's the path most people take, is the path of conformity, but you have another choice. You have another path, and that's to dream again. You can dream again. And that could be dream the same dream, like try it a 10th time or 100th time. It could be dream a different dream. It could be dream a different version of your dream. But that is the choice that will lead to more fulfillment. It will lead to more adventures with the Lord. It'll lead to some scary stuff.
Yeah.
But the choice of conformity it sucks the life out of you. That's why so many people are depressed. Mental health is an issue because they're not pursuing what lights them up because they just think it's a fantasy. They think it's not possible, or they've been kicked in the teeth. Life is hard.
Yes.
And when you've been burnt and you have to put food on the table, you're dealing with the fallout of a death or a divorce or whatever. Like, it's real. But that doesn't mean we shut off our dreams, because when you shut off your dreams, you shut off who you are.
Yeah. I love what you said, that your dreams are trying to show you data. And it's interesting because dreams and data normally do not ever get in the same sentence. Dreams are, for a lot of, I would say the majority of people, dreams are this like lofty, like, oh, it's a dream. Good for you. I've never considered, and I feel like it's such a great perspective of like, that's giving you such insight on not just like these lofty dreams, but, and think about, why do people think like that? It's because they're scared. It's scary for your parents to let you dream too much about being a rock star, because what if you fail? Right? This whole school that we started, it's really Michael's baby, but I love it just as much. But like, the goal is to create a safe environment for kids to fail constantly for 12 years. Because failing means that there's a much more likely chance that these children are going to grow up catching on to the dreams and the data that they need to figure out who they are, because they're not afraid to fail. And conformity is basically like, well, I can't go back. I can't dream again because it's going to burn me again. And I'm going to self-protect and not go back. And I feel like that rang so true. You were just talking about that. I was just having like different seasons of my life pop up and thinking like, man, that is our season losing a child. It's like, either this is the worst season of my life. We had to choose not to conform faith-wise. A lot of people just turn their back on God when they lose a child. Or they go into a hermit shell and they don't share or talk, or they can't deal with the pain. And I fully get that. But gosh, the life that comes from choosing to dream again. I love your two options. It is a life-changing decision to go on one path or the other. So,
well, and that's what I'm living right now. To answer your question, like, I'm in another one of those identity crisis intersections. It's not that a dream has exactly died, but it's almost like my dreams have shifted. What I thought I wanted, and maybe you've experienced this, Katelyn, is not what I really want anymore. And that has scared the crap out of me. And I've done this 2 times already. And it always is scary because you're like, should I just be happy with what I have and the way life is? Should I really, is it wrong to desire more? So real talk, right? When my first business was successful, and we were at a mastermind event in Maine in 2016, when I was walking through this real time, I was like, guys, I've been teaching music recording for 7 years now. And all my dreams have come true. Like I never imagined like anyone would ever care about what I had to say about this topic. And it's been so successful. And yet I'm so burnt out and I don't love it anymore. And I think I want to teach business and I'm scared out of my mind. Yes. And all of you were so kind. You're like, just do it. Like you should do it. But I punted for 2 years because I was so afraid that it wouldn't be successful and that I would regret the decision or feel embarrassed. It was like that memory of not getting the rock star dream was creeping up. And like, remember how that was embarrassing? And you told everybody?
Yeah. Oh,
I was so afraid. It felt like the same thing. It felt like it was rhyming with that history. So that I felt it then, and I'm feeling it now, where I've been now so successful as a business coach. And right. And we've been able to work together. It's been a privilege to work with you for part of your journey. And it's like, I should just stay in this lane and be content. And people are like, yeah, just stay. But as I need to grow. I want to talk about not just business, because business to me has always been a vehicle for living the life that you've wanted to live and the life God called you to live. And so it's one part of a 6-piece puzzle for me. And so this book is my first attempt to talk about the other 5 pieces, your time, your relationships, your spirituality, your health, like all of it's related to me. But I've been so afraid to step out in this space because I'm not known as a full-on personal development guy. I'm like been the business guy. And so I'm literally living it right now where the easy path of conformity for me would be just stay in the business lane, bro. Stay there, keep your head down. Don't be different. Yes. But that dream is so big of I see myself helping people break free in these other areas because I've struggled with identity. This is a book about identity. God wants me to help those people. As Rory Vaden says, right, you're most powerfully positioned to serve the person you once were. This is who I've been. My last 20 years has been my life. So now I feel like God's saying it's time to write this book, help these people. So I'm in the middle of an identity crisis intersection, and I'm trying to choose the path of dreaming again, even though it's scary.
And that's powerful because, quite honestly, I want to read a book of someone that's closer in proximity to the struggle more than like this happened to me 10 years ago, and I'm going to try to remember what it was like. I think it's more powerful to learn from someone who's in the midst of the crisis. And I think it's very tempting, because I've done this so many times. It's very tempting to believe that like, well, I'm not going to pivot or do the thing or teach anyone anything until I know that I am the absolute elite educator in that field. Yep. I felt that doing a mastermind of my own. I just wanted to test out, could I teach people about scalable online education? I don't know. I've done it myself so much, and I took the leap, and I kind of enjoyed it. I did it. Well, I did enjoy it. It was wonderful. But is that my like next 15 years? No, I know it's not. I love to keep doing it here and there, but like I know that that's not the full picture. But it is scary and so tempting to just say, instead of pursuing the next thing, I should just stay where the grass I know is still green. And the truth is, though, I'm like, how long is it going to stay green? Because you can't live in this inauthentic place. And I've done that. I mean, I was talking with you and Shay about this. I've lived in this place of, forcing myself to be inspired in certain areas of my business because it is so safe, safe. But I don't feel like God has called me to safety. There's nothing about the story of my life where God has said, hey, I'm going to make you so comfortable here, and that's where you're going to change lives. My greatest impact on people's lives was going through the scariest tragedy, the biggest tragedy of my life. Yeah. And that's when the most people were impacted by who I am. And so I told someone recently, I'm like, you know what I'm realizing? I'm 36. I'm not super old, but I'm not super young. I'm realizing in this season of life, like, I don't want big. Like, I'm not trying to do a big thing anymore. I want a deep thing. Like, I want a thing that is going to have some roots and legacy. And if that is through a big name and through a bigger platform and through reaching people, that's fine. But if that's through hosting a Bible study for 9 women in my community, and that's where the deepness comes from, then I'm going to follow that. And I think there's fears attached to everything. Like, I look at you and I hear you talk about like, oh man, I'm like, can I really step into this space? It's so clear to me. I'm like, yeah, like, why haven't you done it sooner? But it's hard to see that for yourself. It is. Why do you think that is? I have my ideas, but why do you think that is?
Well, I mean, imposter syndrome is real. we all of life feels like one big imposter syndrome experiment. Like we're so darn insecure, especially the most confident sounding ones of us.
Yes.
The more confident they sound, they probably are the more insecure. And I'm not trying to say that to make myself feel better. It's just like I've gotten to know a lot of people that I'm like have come to me and I'm like, wow, you're insecure. Like you're the guy or you're the girl, which is comforting because they're human.
Yes.
We all just want to be liked. We all want to belong. I mean, there's a lot of reasons why people don't rebel and don't figure out who they are. And I talk about them in the book. Like we want to belong. We want people to accept us. And there's a tension between fitting in with the community, whether that's your actual family. It could be the industry that you're in. Especially if you get known in a small industry or a specific industry, you're known as that person, that girl. They want you to stay the way you are and fit in. There's a tension between that feels good and it feels safe. And that is a good thing to belong. So I have that tension on this side and the tension between that. And then, well, is that really who I am or who I'm becoming or the next part of my life that God has for me? And people don't like you to change once they've put you in a box and put a label on you. I don't like me to change. I'm a person that likes labels. And I've always told Shay, and she disagrees with me because she's wired differently. I'm like, I just want to be one thing and be good at one thing and be known for one thing and be a master at it my whole life. And she's the woman that's like, don't put me in a box. I want to be a million different things and do a million different things. And so she never understood my desire. And God didn't really seem to care about that desire. He's like, nah, you're going to be all these different things. And I'm seeing the richness in it now. But I think it's scary. I think, here's what I think we do, Katelyn. I think we trade fulfillment and satisfaction in life for either success or safety. And you can be successful and not satisfied at what you're doing. Oh, yeah. You can be successful and not be making an impact and not serving people. And so I think there's a sweet spot between where you have success, however you define that, satisfaction, and service to others. And the sweet spot in all three of those things is doing it your way, the way you were wired to do it. There's a million ways to be successful, but it may not be the way God made you. So it could work, but you'll hate it. Yeah. There's a million ways to be satisfied in life, but it's not going to have impact or be of service to other people. So then it's just sort of like selfish. Yeah. Well, let's get to that sweet spot where I'm successful, I'm satisfied in my success, and I'm making an impact and serving others. And I think that it's by being a rebel and being the way God designed you.
Yes. Oh, that's so good. That is so good. I appreciate, your honesty about sharing that if you had it your way, you just want to be good at one thing, known for one thing. And my question that popped in my mind is like, from a coaching background, but what do you get out of that? And like, what would I get out of that? Because I've had that same thought of like, I just want to be the queen of this.
Yeah.
And that's what it is. I just want this protected, safe space where I can own it. And no one else can take it from me. And I don't have to get into the scary zone again. So I don't know what you think for you, but that's what happens for me.
That's deep. I mean, that is way to call it out. Like there's safety in like being known as something. Cause then I it's already known. Everyone knows I'm great at this one thing. And I can be like, yeah, I'm not good at that, but I'm great at this. And like, that just feels like a cozy blanket. It feels like a perfectly fitted jacket. Like it feels comfortable. Mm-hmm. And you talked about comfort versus safety. I always heard that, like, especially if you have a church background or faith background, I've had some bad teaching or teaching that I misinterpreted where it was like, if you want comfort, you're sinful. And if you really love God, like your life will be a disaster and be hard all the time. It'll be suffering. And I'm like, well, I don't want suffering, but I love God. Like, so like, am I really a Christian? Like, and I always felt conflicted. And I think this year, especially, the Lord's been taking me on a journey of better understanding who he really is. And like, I don't know if you do words for the year. I never did that. But this year I was like, well, I'll ask God if he has a word for me. I'm not going to come up with a word for the year. So I was like, God, if I were to have a word for the year, what would it be? And I swear, instantly I heard the word delight. He said, I want you to delight. And I want you to understand that I delight in you and that you're allowed to delight. In fact, if you pursue the path, and this is what I believe in the book too, if you pursue the path of delighting in the things you delight in, the things you dream about, it might take you into uncomfortable places. Like think about every good adventure story you've ever read or watched in a movie, like Lord of
Right.
the Rings, Star Wars, whatever, Harry Potter, whatever you like. They go into uncomfortable, scary situations, but it's like they almost want to because they want to solve the mystery or they want to defeat the person. They want to get to the top of the mountain. And it would be so boring and comfortable if they stayed in the Shire or stayed on Tatooine, their planet, or stayed at home and
Yeah.
didn't go to Hogwarts. So it's like they don't really want to be comfortable because life is boring. But they're not suffering. They're just going on an adventure. And adventures are scary sometimes. And sometimes there's pain and loss, but there's also treasures that you find. And that's what makes you feel alive. And Caitlin, I just want to go on an adventure. I want to pursue the things that God's put me in my heart to pursue. And I think I will get both joy and delight, but it'll come with some uncomfortable situations, but it'll be worth it in the end. And I don't want to wait till I'm 100 or 80 or whenever God takes me. I'm like, man, it was safe and it was comfortable,
Yes.
but I never got to go on a freaking adventure and pursue what's in my heart. And I'm tired of playing it safe, and I don't want other people to, because I actually don't think, to your point, you alluded to this so beautifully, I don't think it actually is safe. I think it's an illusion of safety.
Yes.
And the grass is only green temporarily. And if you stay put, it'll start to fade. And I think we have to keep moving and pursue that itch that God's put in our heart. If you actually want green grass, you got to actually go to another yard at some point.
Yes.
And if don't take the metaphor too far, you know what I'm saying? Like you got to go on the adventure and go where God's leading you. Don't fight those desires, because I think, again, desires are clues. It's the way God wired us, and they're worth investigating.
Yeah, that is so powerful. We just saw Jordan Peterson live in Richmond.
Oh,
and
love it.
wow, I mean, I would pay to go see that over and over and over again. And it's a different talk every time. He made this crazy analogy talking about how, like, the call we have as people of God, the creation in general, it's about a call to adventure, and whether or not you're going to step into the call of adventure that God has specifically for your life. Talks about how, like, Abraham, he had it made, right? Came from a wealthy family, had it made. It was super comfortable. But he didn't get called the father of nations until he risked his life at war and was asked to sacrifice his son. It wasn't until he said, okay, I'll go on the adventure. I'll become the warrior. I'll become this. I'll become that. I will put myself in the trenches when I could stay in comfort. And that's when God showed him the purpose of all of it. And I do think that, I forget who says it. Some pastor said recently that that this is the generation that worships comfort. We worship it. We need it. And it's not that it's always bad, but you're spot on to where, like, you can enjoy and delight in life, but it's your heart and your willingness to step out into the adventure that is going to be delightful, and it's going to be powerful, but it's also going to have moments of, like, wait, why did I sign myself up for this? Why did I step? We feel that with this school that we started. Man, we don't know how to start a school. Like, we have no, what? But we felt called to it. And the whole premise of the whole concept of the school is called The Hero's Journey. And it's what you spoke to. Any adventure, The Hobbit, Harry Potter, anything, any story where you leave home to go on an adventure and you meet people that are going to join you and help you. You meet the mentors, you meet the allies, you meet those people that are going to help you. But then you reach a dark cave where, like, the treasure you seek is the cave you don't want to go into. And then you come home a changed person. And, like, that's every day these learners get introduced to the concept that, like, this is your pattern, and it's a pattern of life. And so I love what you shared about that, because I think that it really puts into perspective the fact that, like, if this is how life occurs for most people, which I know that it is, this opportunity for adventure, it really comes down to our courage and our choice. And I feel like your book is unveiling the beauty of choosing to lean into it when the rest of the world is just like, just stand still, don't try to start the business. It's so much easier just to get a paycheck. And if you have, I know you've done some coaching as well, like the same background. If you have a belief, and maybe you probably talk about this at some part in the book, but if you have a belief, you have this fear, it's going to creep up, and you're going to look for ways to prove it right. So I see that in your story of, like, the record deals, proof that I can't, the guidance counselor was right. I can't make this happen. This isn't going to be a dream for me. What would you say to somebody who feels like, man, they just keep getting reassurance that their fear is going to be their reality. If they can't break through that, they read the book and they want what you're talking about, but they cannot overcome the fear. What would you say?
Yeah, I would say there's two voices in your head, and I talk about this in the book in the a process I call doing an inner story audit. We all have an inner story,
Yeah.
and the problem with that inner story is we never challenge it or question it or actually write it down and see what is it really saying. And that inner story is very loud. It is what drives us in our default mode. I'm not good enough. This is stupid. No one cares about you. It won't work. That pain is too much, whatever it is. And it might feel real and it might be based in some real reality. So I'm not saying it's made up, but it needs to be challenged. And so there's that story that's on repeat in your head. And if you're a person of faith, I believe the enemy, we know that he's a liar and an accuser. And so that's his one tactic, is to lie. That's how he started in the garden, Genesis 3, with Adam and Eve. And that's what he's been doing ever since. So we create some of these lies ourselves. So sometimes he doesn't even have to do much, but he might throw in one little lie and then we'll just take it to the next level.
Oh yeah.
That story is happening in your brain, probably multiple stories. But there's another voice in there, and Scripture calls it the still small voice. That's what Elijah experienced, right? He walked 40 days to God, the mountain of God, to hear from God about what to do with the people of Israel. And there was an earthquake, and God's voice wasn't in the earthquake. There was a fire. God's voice wasn't in the fire. There was the wind. It's like a hurricane. God's voice wasn't in the wind. But after those three, there was this still small voice. That's the voice of the Holy Spirit. God whispers, right? I've heard it say that God speaks primarily through his word, which is written in the Bible, his wisdom that he gives us. Like if you start to walk with the Lord, you have intuitive wisdom, and then he'll whisper specific things to us. It's not loud. It's not loud. So I think, and if you're not a person of faith, call it intuition, call it a hunch, whatever. It's still there.
Right.
There's someone trying to speak to you, to guide you. Isaiah chapter 30 talks about there'll be a voice behind you saying, turn to the left, turn to the right. There is such clarity there. If only we would quiet the inner story that's so loud. And that takes a practice of stillness and silence and solitude. It takes a practice of journaling out what is the story I'm telling myself and repeat, challenging that story. Our mutual friend Julia Woods has got great resources on this, on like what else could be as true, if not more true, than the story you're telling yourself. So for me, I think that's the process. If you don't do any work, you're going to keep drifting in that current of conformity we talked about. So it does take a little bit of work, like you said, getting out of the river and standing on the river, but it's not that hard. It just takes like a little moment of intentionality, trapping those thoughts on paper, and then saying, okay, well, that's crazy. That is a truth maybe, but what else could be true? And once you start to listen to that still small voice, then you're going to hear something very different. And then you get to choose which voice to listen to. And so for me, I hear the story, the inner story I have all the time is, I'm not good enough. And that will manifest as, I'm not really a good enough author. Like I can't, if I write this book, like people go, that's okay. And I don't want to be found out that I'm not a good enough author. I'm doing more public speaking. I'm afraid I'm not going to be good enough as a public speaker in the way I want to be. I'm afraid that I should have stayed in the business lane and I'm not good enough in the personal development, holistic, motivational type person to own that lane and be in that lane with the Tony Robbins and the John Gordons or the whomevers, right? Whoever, John Maxwell's, whoever. So I have that inner story. It's very loud. And I listen to it a lot. When I put in enough effort, Katelyn, to quiet that voice so that I can listen to what else is there, I hear different things. I hear, I have a plan for you. I've got people I want you to impact. You are perfectly the way I designed you, and you're going to do great things. Write this book and see what happens next. Don't worry about anything else. Like, just write it and get it out there in the world. And I'm pleased with you. I believe in you. I delight in you. Like, you're impacting people. And so that I hear that. And I'll hear specific things like, hey, talk to this person. Pitch this person to come on their podcast. Like, ask this question. Like, I'll get little nuggets, and that's that still small voice. So we all have a choice which one to listen to, and one seems to fuel life in me, and one seems to just bring death. And it's pretty obvious if you're a person of faith to see that duality of, I wonder where one voice is coming from and where the other one's coming from.
Oh, that's so good. As you're talking, I'm like, oh, I want to ask him about that. Oh no, wait, I'm going to ask him about that. So many points. Yeah, I've been through I'm in a season like this, and I'm recognizing that I, oh man, I'm 3 months ago, I was in a space of just pure mental exhaustion, from trying to figure out all this stuff. I want the next phase. I want the next thing. I want it laid out for me. I don't like what I'm doing. I'm miserable doing this, miserable doing that. And I just want the answers. And it's so fascinating because like the answer that God, the still small voice that I couldn't hear because I was trying to be my own savior, um, all he was doing was inviting me to rest. That just a simple invitation. And when you have a belief system that believes that like you're great because you strive and you pull yourself up from your bootstraps, and I operate up until now, I have operated through force. Like I make it happen. And I hate the term like boss babe, I hate that. I hate all that. But I will say that there's probably a part of me that is like, no, I can make it happen. I can do it. And God's like, you're done with that version of you.
Wow.
And I'm going to create some physical barriers to keep you from going back to that version of yourself, because you'll never be able to access the next thing that I have for you if you keep trying to save yourself. So can you just take a second and chill out? That's what I feel like God, still small voice, is just telling me, can you just calm down and recognize, Katelyn, that you struggle to just sit on the front porch with a notebook and a journal while your kids play. You have the capacity to do it, but you've told yourself you can't because there's so much to be done. And you've told yourself that for a decade. And the still small voice for me recently has been, put lemon in your water and go sit on the porch and let the boys just be boys, and you take some time for you. And I have not been able to access that because I've been trying to fix it for myself. So my still small voice, I feel like God is saying, you are not going to get the answers you think you want, but that's not even what you need. What you need, I know what you need. And it's funny, as I surrender to that, and I just do that in the mornings, it's so simple. I just do that in the mornings. I can't tell you. I just had a coaching call this morning and I listed out all these things that have opened up for me since I was obedient in that one moment in the morning. It is mind blowing. From like investor conversations for a future campus for the school that I was freaking out about, trying to figure out how can we make this work. I'm not supposed to save that situation.
Yeah.
Answers for my children with some medical stuff, opportunities to be in a small group coaching with your wife, things that just
Yes.
popped
Yes.
up that God's like, okay, you were obedient with one thing. I'm going to pull back the curtain and give you some more answers. And it has blown my mind. And it's interesting because I think people that are so success driven and people that want to read all the self-help and the personal development books, they want these massive mega answers, like 5 steps to this. And my story and what you speak to is that small voice comes at a place of surrender. Like there's no way to access the still small voice without being in a place where you're ready to receive it, because you'll never hear it. And I struggle with that, and I'm learning. I love that I'm not alone. I love that you shared that your insecurities speak louder than the still small voice. And I feel like that's probably the most normalized thing that you have said. I mean, you're a normal person, but you just made everyone understand that, like, man, if that can happen to him, launching his second book, being featured in all these, major news networks and have all this publicity, and like, you are the epitome of success. And yet you're sitting here saying like, I still have to find the still small voice. I think that is something that the world needs to hear. And so it's something that I need to hear. So thank you for that.
Well, thank you for sharing. That was powerful.
Yeah, I just have my list, my markers. It's
Marker
so
list.
funny. Man, we've answered a lot of these questions, and I've just loved getting a peek into where this book came from. I don't know anything about writing a book. I always say one day I will. And so I'd love to have a conversation one day about how you know when the right time is. But it sounds like, when the Lord drops it on you, when that still small voice is like, hey, go pitch this to somebody, you just have to like be obedient and do it.
Yeah.
So, but
Yeah,
thank you
definitely.
so much for sharing. Thank you for opening up this time to be able to just share what you're doing with our audience, with our people. How can people make sure they don't miss this? Make sure they get in on the book and they don't overlook this, because this is happening when? If you want to give us a little synopsis of that.
Yeah, thank you. The book drops September 3rd. And if it's before September 3rd, you can pre-order the book wherever you want But if you go to therebelbook.com, and you can pre-order the book there or wherever, just bring your receipt there and enter in your order confirmation number. I've got a bunch of bonuses for you that I think will really help you, and they can help you immediately. So one, I did a master class with John Gordon, who wrote the foreword to the book, teaching the book. So it's like a 60-minute training. Like you can start like learning. I'll coach you through the book real time right now.
Awesome.
But also I took the 5 most powerful exercises out of the book, because I told you I wrote the book kind of like a coaching session. I took the 5 biggest exercises out of it and put them into a journal that you can download immediately, the Rebel Journal. And there's self-guided exercises to start doing some of this deep work and figuring out who you are, the way God wired you. So you don't even have to wait for the book to come out to start doing this work. So you get the journal, you get access to a private community where I'm going to be doing some coaching in it, and then a 30-day Rebel challenge, which is like I wrote 30 emails, 30 days of emails that teaching you little nuggets from the book, so you could fire that whenever you want and have a little bit of accountability and encouragement in your inbox for 30 days. And you get all of those bonuses for free if you take your receipt to therebelbook.com. But yeah, I would say, man, if you're ready to figure out like who am I, where am I going in this season, this book will give you the framework and the tools to start that process. And if nothing else, it'll encourage the heck out of you and give you permission to dream again and be the way you are, be the way God made you, because he's got so much for you, so much more. If you're willing to, like you said, take the hero's journey, step out, leave the Shire, go on the adventure, and see what great things are in store for you.
That is so awesome. Gosh, thank you so much for doing this, for sharing, and I cannot wait to see the impact that this has on so many people. So
thanks, Katelyn. I appreciate you. Thanks for having me on.
thanks.